I lay there and watched the god I had created die. At the end, when we were cold as the stone we had hewn his body from, when the lights were nearly all extinguished, we heard, in the silent distance, the man-pigs singing to one another. Then, as the last lights were gone, and we lay together in the deep, they drifted away, and all was silent. Such a silence I have never known. And as the dust settled on my open eyes, and we lay together embraced forever, I heard, miles above us, the sounds of the city turning over in its sleep. The church bell ringing out, and in that moment, the new century was born.
So there was this awesome writer who wrote bizarre stories that crossed the line between the ridiculous and terrifying. And this writer brought forth tales of horror that revolutionized the science fiction and fantasy genres. A Tolkien he may not be, but a master of the surreal, rivaling the melody of Lewis Carroll's writing, while being comparably eerie to the great and mysterious Edgar Allan Poe. This writer's name was H.P Lovecraft. If you have seen any of my videos, you probably know how much of a fan I am of H.P Lovecraft. If you haven't seen any of my videos, well, I must say it again, I am a huge fan of the craft, the Lovecraft to be precise. Although he was a straight up psycho and an absolute xenophobe, I can't help but love his strange tales. But we are not here to talk about the Lovecraft, we are here to talk about his country. No, not America, Lovecraft country. So the first time I watched this series I was pissed off, because even though the title of this story is Lovecraft country, it only has references to Lovecraft and his monsters. And besides, they even screwed up a Lovecraftian ending by making people special or the chosen one. Because in most of Lovecraft's stories, the endings are bleak, but leaves the viewer wanting to know more about the world of the story. Instead, the series did the exact opposite. They decided to provide an unnecessary amount of closure. This is a blatant issue I see in Jordan Peele's and J.J. Abrams' stories, like Fringe and Get Out. You shouldn't explain things that do not need explaining. But that's not all. The insane amount of contrivances and the ridiculous plot armor the characters have made Lois Lane look vulnerable. Now you might be confused to whether I liked it or not. Honestly, I did like it. I liked it. I liked it the same way I liked The Rise of Skywalker. Without going into too much detail, both of them are utterly nonsensical stories with gaping plot holes, but they are entertaining on their own right. So this video is not going to be me tearing into these scenes, even though I could do a little of that as well. This video is mainly going to be an exhausting amount of mental gymnastics and apologetic arguments. So let's get into what I liked about the series. Even though there are so many things to criticize about this series, I must admit, the characters are likable and well developed. There are a lot of interesting build-ups and payoffs, but I feel like it would be a lot better if I went episode by episode. The first is probably the best episode, with so many amazing references to Lovecraft, John Carter and Bram Stoker's Dracula. The episode starts with Atticus, a war veteran, coming home from South Korea to find out why his father sent him a mysterious letter. Then we are introduced to George Freeman, the uncle of Atticus, who informs him that his father disappeared. During their first encounter, well, they talk about
On the creation of niggas.
Now that's one of Lovecraft's we don't hear mentioned often.
yeah, Lovecraft's some works are hilariously racist, but you need to remember he doesn't believe in God or gods. And the poem talks about how black people were created imperfectly by the gods to serve the white people. Now you might say, that still makes him racist. Yeah, but in At the Mountains of Madness, he provides a much more fascinating story about the genesis of life. But in order to make Lovecraft appear as an insane evil pulp trash writer, they ignore all that and just throw this poem in the faces of his fans. But let's not get carried away, cause this is only the first episode. So they head to Ardham to find what happened to Atticus's father, with Letitia Williams, a childhood friend of Tick's. In their way, they experience several levels of racism. To be honest, I was lucky enough to be born in the 21st century, so I have never been a victim of racism. But the portrayals of racism in this show feels exaggerated to an incredible degree, to where all white people are evil. And that's not a joke. There isn't a single white person who accepts them for who they are. Well, that's other than the villain. I'll get to her later. The episode ends with them escaping the grasp of what I assume are imperfect shoguns. And then they just stumble into Ardham, although they failed to locate it for hours. Then the second episode happened. We are introduced to the Order of the Ancient Dawn and Christina Braithwaite and William, I guess. The episode starts off with a fascinating tone, with a strange implication that something is wrong. They don't really go anywhere with it cause they get their memories back right after losing them. There is a lot of exposition in this episode, an incredible amount of it. So much that I can't reveal all of it. So let me give you the spark notes of it. Magic exists, or the Order of the Ancient Dawn got magic. Now women are allowed in the cult. Atticus is a relative of the founder of the cult. This makes him the next in line to be the leader. Christina's father is stupid and he wants to go back to the Garden of Eden, even though his daughter says,
Biblical literalism is for the simple.
all of the cult dies except for Christina, and they save Tick's father and escapes. But unfortunately, George Freeman dies. I wasn't a huge fan of this episode because it was rushed and executed poorly, but it's not completely bad. Then the next episode happens. Episode number 3, The Holy Ghost. With the help of Christina, Letitia buys a house, which turns out to be haunted. There is a lot of weird shit going on, but we get some character development for George's wife, Hippolyta, and his daughter Dee. And in this house there is an ovary. Hippolyta, who likes the stars, decides to steal it, despite having no way of stealing it without everyone finding out. And a bunch of handsome racist guys crash Letitia's party by being douchebags. Seriously, why do all of them good looking white fellas gotta be Nazis? Anyway, Letitia and her sister Ruby gets mad at each other for the millionth time. Even though I like these characters, there is an unnecessary amount of drama surrounding them. Then the power of Christ compels Jeffrey Epstein to leave Letitia's house. And I almost forgot, there is a Nazi wizard policeman in this episode who acts as a minor villain in the series. Then Atticus tries to kill Christina in broad daylight, cause he's dumb. and Christina promises she will leave them alone if they find 2 pages of the Book of Names.
The Book of Names.
Yeah, the Necronomicon.
No, that's the Book of Dead Names. This is the Book of Life.
A History of Violence is the 4th episode, I guess. This is honestly a very entertaining episode. It reminds me of Indiana Jones. Letitia, Atticus and Montrose, who is Atticus's father by the way, goes on a quest to retrieve the lost pages of the Book of Names in an underground vault, even though it is unclear why the pages were guarded in such a bizarre way and why there is an elevator that leads back to Letitia's haunted house. But we might have to ignore these reasonable criticisms so we can move forward, cause in the vault there is, and I shit you not, an undead Native American transgender siren. Yeah, she's everything I just said, and she is pretty good looking for an undead siren. But Atticus punches her in the face, and later on Montrose slices her neck and kills the pretty little fella. And meanwhile, a depressed Ruby meets William at a bar and starts some sort of a relationship. And oh boy, if you think all that was weird, trust me, you ain't seen shit. The next episode is all about Ruby. Now, I'ma be honest, this was one of my favorite episodes. Although barely anything of relevance happened in this episode, I found it entertaining. But this is where stuff gets weird. Apparently, Christina Braithwaite has a potion that can give you the power to temporarily become someone else. And the episode is about Ruby learning about true freedom until it is revealed that William was Christina all along. This twist was quite inconsequential for everyone other than Ruby, who was in love with William, thus with Christina. And it is also confirmed that Montrose is in fact gay, which creates a conflict later between him and Atticus.
So it is true. You are a faggot.
But for now, let's move on to the next episode. Meet me in Dagobah. I'ma level with you. This episode was boring and depressing. It's about the days Atticus spent in South Korea and a South Korean lady who is also a Kamiho. Now this is another one of those contrivances, but we might have to move on. A Kamiho, also known as a Kitsune in Japan and a Pinyin in China, is a 9-tailed fox spirit that seduces men and drains their souls. So the Kamiho tries to absorb Atticus' soul but fails because he has endured too much pain. Okay, whatever. So this episode has very little to offer other than setting things up for the final payoff, and the next episode cranks up the absurdity to incomprehensible level by introducing us to the concept of time travel. So the episode starts with Hippolyta solving the puzzle of the ovary. Then she finds a bunch of coordinates and goes to find out what these coordinates are. Turns out they are the location of a time machine. And conveniently for her, the time machine's controls are celestial symbols, which she is familiar with. So she activates the time machine. Unfortunately for Hippolyta, the wizard policeman's minions find out that someone has activated the time machine. So they start looking, but luckily for Hippolyta, Letitia finds out the coordinates and tells Atticus, who has gone on a quest to find the Book of Names. So Atticus conveniently arrives at Hippolyta's location at the perfect time.
Larry, is that you?
Cause if he was a second late, Hippolyta would be dead. And speaking of dead, Hippolyta and Atticus gets transported to different points of time? Okay, look, if I am understanding this correctly, Hippolyta goes to a distant future where humanity is omniscient and has the power to do anything. So in the story Shadow Out of Time, Lovecraft talks about the great race of Yeth, a group of beings whose knowledge knows no bounds. These ancient species are almost omniscient thanks to their ability to project their consciousness through time. So although it is not confirmed, I feel like this is where the inspiration for the lazily designed future humans comes from. Now this addition to the series helps explain almost all the contrivances so far, but it does create more problems for the rest of the episode. So Hippolyta gets captured by the future people and then they allow her to take part in tests that would give her infinite knowledge. Okay, I mean this makes a bit of sense since she's trying to dismantle everything to find something familiar, but infinite knowledge? Okay, if you don't think that is a big deal, let me explain what it entails. She has the knowledge to cure any disease, make anything, and do just about anything she wants. Do you know what it makes her?
Jesus! Yeah.
But that is not even close to all the ridiculous plot-breaking events that takes place. Atticus meets Dee in the future and receives a copy of the book Lovecraft Country.
Wait a minute!
Definitely not a dream.
Now since we have thrown logic out of the door, I'm not even going to describe every episode. I'm just going to tell you how broken the story is while giving you a summary. So Atticus comes back with the copy of Lovecraft Country, reads it and goes home without Hippolyta. Then I'm not sure when he read the book, but I'll let it pass. Then the policeman finds out that Hippolyta's daughter is Dee, so they put a curse on her that slowly mutates her into a mockery of her fears. And if that wasn't enough plot-breaking contrivances, Christina gives Letitia the power of invulnerability. Apparently she can do that. And somehow Hippolyta comes back and tries to heal her daughter. Now this raises many questions. Why didn't Hippolyta return earlier? Now you might say, well, she was receiving infinite knowledge, but time travel is established and Atticus, unlike her, travels through time and comes back instantly. Hippolyta could have stopped the police wizard from putting a curse on Dee, but it's okay, right? Cause Hippolyta has infinite knowledge. She can just fix Dee up, right? Apparently, in order to help Dee, Hippolyta with her infinite wisdom needs the Book of Names. And even then, a cure isn't guaranteed. I mean, okay, I'm going to move on. Oh wait, I can't. Everything past this point is about trying to help Dee. So they go back in time to get the Book of Names, instead of going back and stopping the wizard from cursing her. Oh yeah, and the Kamiho comes out of nowhere to warn Atticus, but apparently nobody cares. They go back in time, grab the Book of Names, come back and tries to heal Dee. Christina wants the book. Atticus says, nah. Christina wants Atticus. Atticus says, yeah, sure. He dies. Christina becomes immortal and loses her immortality after the Komiho absorbs his soul and kills him again. And well, the story ends. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot. Ruby and Letitia gets into a fight again. Ruby pushes her off a roof, and just when she's about to die, Ruby casts invulnerability on Letitia. Now, I'm not sure when Ruby got this ability, to be honest, but that's the least of my issues with this ending, because I can keep telling you everything wrong with the episodes. But that is not why I am here today. I am here to explain how I could like something this flawed. To be honest, it's hard to explain, but I will go ahead and do my best. The arc Montrose goes through in the series almost made me tear up. I can't think of a single bad actor among the cast. It may have sickeningly graphic scenes, but I actually like that aspect. The imperfect shogats are cute. The Yith are misrepresented, but at least they got a mention, right? I know, the good things are few and far between. And it is also fair to say I am biased towards anything with references to Lovecraft, and it is also understandable if you didn't like it because some issues are too goddamn massive to ignore. But in my subjective and bizarre opinion, I liked it. Oh yeah, and don't forget to like and subscribe before you leave.